when I think about a blend, I'm thinking about a major chord in music. So the high note is the acid, the low note is the tannins, and then the middle of your chord is sort of like all that the body and the balance and all these things in the middle. And so you're trying to take something and you're trying to make it fit into this. I always kind of imagine it's like a globe and everything kind of fits together. So you don't have something that's an elbow sticking out or something that's jarring in some way. You have to work towards something that's balanced. So I think that's the most important thing to me is how these interactions take place. So um, the aroma should match the palate. So what you smell and what your expectations are met by what it tastes like. Or um, you want, you don't want the alcohol to stick out. You don't want the acid to stick out. You don't want to be overly tannic. So there are all these things that are kind of working together. And my goal is to make something that kind of sings. It kind of is more than the accumulation of all the parts. That it's something that's even better than that. So
Welcome, everybody, back to the Barrels and Roots podcast. I am your host, Sean Trace, and I have an awesome guest with me today. Would you like to tell people who you are and a little bit about what you do?
I am Julie Schreiber. I live in Northern California. So I work as a consulting winemaker. So I do lots of different things. If you go on my website, it says I'm a chef, a winemaker, and a mushroom forager. So I do a little bit of many things.
That's awesome. It's awesome to have all of those skills and all of those ways that you can interact. But I mean, we're here to talk about the wine, but the
We could
mushrooms
talk
are
about whatever you like.
all of them are interesting. Now, I want to
Yeah.
ask you this real quick, like what really helped you fall in love with wine? What was it that started you down this path?
So I actually went, if you go far enough back, I really love Julia Child, and so my initial thought was I should be a chef. And so I went to culinary school and I cooked for a total of about 14 years. And while I was at culinary school, we took a class on wine. So it was more tasting and appreciation. And so it was about 6 weeks, 5 days a week. So I
Mm,
got to taste a lot of wine in a very short period of time. And I was like, "That's really cool. I wanna know more about it." So then I moved from upstate New York to, San Francisco area, and, when I was cooking, I was like, "Do I wanna continue doing this, or do I wanna switch to doing something else?" And I kept thinking back to how much I liked the wine and how
yeah.
much I thought it kinda made sense with what I already knew. I used to be a saucier, so I would make, a lot of sauces, and, so the idea of blending and kind of combining flavors and textures together made a lot of sense to me. And I thought, I have some skill set that would work really well with wine. And I also, lived in San Francisco, so going up to wine country was really close by. And so I thought this would be a really great thing to do. Then I thought I got to take a little science. So
Mhm.
that was the hard part. Was I actually took a whole bunch of courses at City College in San Francisco, and they were, $13 a unit, so nice and cheap. Uh, but I had to take, uh, biology, microbiology, chemistry, organic chemistry, physics, statistics, all sorts of stuff. And I survived that. So that was sort of like, can I do this? Can I not do this? And I would say her biggest hurdle is studying chemistry. So I survived that and then went up to UC Davis and got my master's degree in enology. So met lots of great people, and I've been making wine now for about 25 years. So, yeah, it the bug stuck.
That's awesome. Well, do you remember when, like, it stopped being just a profession and became something more for you?
I there's a lot about it that I really like. So I would say I like walking in the vineyard, sampling the fruit, being out in nature. That's probably why I like the mushroom foraging too. I like just the fruit is delicious. I like the fermentation and, like, tasting the wine every day as it's fermenting, as it's aging. I think it's delicious every single day, and it kind of talks to me, and so I'm like, I think it's fun in that aspect of it. Um, there's so many angles to what I do. I really like, um being involved with teams, so I like doing that as far as being in a production facility, but since I'm a consultant, I work with lots of different people, so, every day is different. So I don't get bored because I'm doing all sorts of different things. I do a lot of wine judging, so I get to taste hundreds of wines a year,
That's
and
awesome.
I think wine is delicious. So I would have to say traveling to wine country is cool, going to Italy or France or, being up here in Northern California, all great. So it's hard to pinpoint exactly what it is about wine that I like, but I would say there's a lot of sides to it.
That's awesome. Well, and you
Mhm.
you've dedicated decades to wine across different regions and styles. Like, it's not
Yeah.
one, some people are like a specialist for like this.
Mhm.
This person leans in on Napa Sonoma wines, but
That's
you
right.
really sought out wines around the world. Like, what is it? What region really calls to you, or is it
Mm.
all of them?
Well, I would say that, every day you're having a meal and you're like, "This would taste really great with a glass of," and so I can't say, "Oh, I only like making Pinot Noir," or "I only like making Cabernet," because I think all of it's pretty fun. So it's really like, um this in 2025, I got to make Pinot Noir again. I hadn't made it in probably 8 years, and so that was really fun to get to make that again. I made Pinot and Pinot Rosé. I
Mm,
make Cabernet, I make Sauvignon Blanc, I make Chardonnay. Those are the majority, but, when I worked for Sterling, I think we made 32 different wines,
oh,
and when I
wow.
worked for, Gallo Sonoma, we made I there was one year where I made Chardonnay, and we made 16 different Chardonnays. So we made a lot of different wines, but it really just, the idea of the fermentation and the tasting of it every day and um, the blending and all the aspects of it, I really love it, and, I also spend a lot of time, consulting in different areas where I'm teaching other people how to make it.
Mm.
So there's also some fun in it's sort of like sleuthing. What's going on? How can we make it better? What are you doing? There's some aspects of working my brain that I really like as well.
Well, that's interesting because,
Hmm.
one of the things I love that idea of sleuthing. Like, you are watching for certain things, you're tasting for
Hmm.
certain things, and it's like you're almost like a little Sherlock Holmes, like and you have to
Yeah.
listen to the clues. I remember I went to one wine tasting class, and the person was like, "Don't just take the surface level things because you want to go deeper. You want to."
Hmm.
I remember, reading a story when I was younger, and it was a short story. And I remember in class, I read the story and I was done. I was like, that was a good story. And my teacher's like, well, did you read the extra stuff? And I was like, what extra stuff? It was just one story. He's like, nah, but there's layers. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He said, read it again and see if you can pick up anything else that's going on. I was like, what do you mean? What else is going on? And after I read it a second time, I was like, oh, so that line right there was kinda talking about this over here, and he's like, "Yeah, there's these layers, and you have to be able to listen for them." And when
Absolutely. Hmm.
when you're tasting a wine, what is it that you're listening for? What are the things that you're
So because I see the guitars in the background,
okay,
I'll give you a musical reference.
I love it.
So, when I think about a blend, I'm thinking about, a major chord in music. So,
Mhm.
the high note is the acid, the low note is the tannins, and then the middle of your chord is, sort of like all the body and the balance and all these things in the middle, and so you're trying to take, something, and you're trying to make it fit into this. I always kind of imagine it's like a globe, and everything kind of fits together. So,
Yeah.
you don't have something that's, an elbow sticking out or, something that's jarring in some way. If there you have to work towards something that's balanced. So, I think that's the most important thing to me is how these interactions take place. So, um the aroma should match the palate. So what you smell and what your expectations are met by what it tastes like.
Mm.
Or, um, you want, you don't want the alcohol to stick out. You don't want the acid to stick out. You don't wanna be overly tannic. So there are all these things that are kind of working together, and my goal is to make something that kinda sings. It kind of, is more than the, accumulation of all the parts, that it's something that's even better than that. So, not only is it, uh, delicious now, but maybe, you have it in the glass and it changes it with the air exposure. So, how it is as you're sitting during your meal and having it with all the different foods that are on your plate, how things I always talk to people about when I do classes on, wine pairing is, do you have the food first or the wine first? And
Mm.
really, you go back and forth and try both ways, and they should both enhance the other one. So it's sort of like, so there's all these different aspects to it going on at the same time.
I was, I took a class on audio mixing.
Mhm,
I am not good I'm a very good video editor. I'm very
okay,
good at crafting and creating content, doing content things. I mean, that's what I have a company for. I make
mhm,
videos. But what I wanted to learn more about music so I could get better quality audio for my videos. So I took a class from
mhm,
Berklee College of Music in online, but it was the school in Boston, such a great school. And my teacher was an absolute master of audio mixing. And one of the things that was really interesting was that he had us listen to a jazz track, and then he gave us a sample of that jazz track broken into parts. Now, what was interesting is when we listened to the drum alone, he was like, or listen at full volume. We listened to all of these different things, the guitar, the piano, actually, I can't remember what was the components. It was like the horn section, there was, a bass, there was a piano, I think there was a guitar, there was the vocals, and all of these pieces, right? Now we listened
mhm,
to all of them at full level, and he's like, "Alright, you listen to the guitar by itself. Okay, cool. Listen to the drums by itself." And when you listen to all of them and they're at full max level, and he put them all together at full max level, it was just like, "Whoa." It was overwhelming. It was
yeah,
overwhelming, and you can't it didn't sound right. So he said, "Okay, now we're gonna start bringing different elements down and giving them space." And I was like, "What do you mean giving it space?" He's like, "Alright, so this here, I'm gonna pan this instrument to the right side. So it's gonna be over
mm,
here and sitting
mhm,
back a little bit. We're gonna bring it down a bit. Over here, this piece, the drums." And the cool part with jazz mixing, and this isn't like the way they mix, like, modern K-pop or something like that. That's big and full. But even that, the drums are sliding off to the side and more of the vocals and things come down the middle. But when
that's right.
with jazz, they'll slide over. All right, so your drum kit, when you look at a jazz performing, is gonna be more middle, okay? But you're gonna have something else over here on this side. That instrument might be on the right, and we're gonna slide this to this side. And then he said, "All right, now listen to it together." And I just was like, oh, wow, everything had space, and because everything had space, there was room for the vocals, and those vocals just slid right down the center, and you're like, "Wow."
That's right, yeah.
But you
So
you
that's what
have
it's like making wine.
you have to make space, you can't have that something
Yeah.
too much. Now, how do you do that then?
There are purists that are like, "Oh, it has to be 100% one varietal," which I don't think is true. But you can also be like, "Well, it's all one varietal, but it could be from multiple, vineyards." so you get something from that. Or, years ago, I used to make a Pinot Gris from the Oak Knoll region in Napa, and
Mm,
we would do multiple picks of the same block. And so you
mm,
get some things got, early picks got the nice acidity, and some things got picked much later, so they had the riper fruit flavors. So then when you put them together, you had some complexity there. So you're also just trying to think about what goes well together. And sometimes it's, you make blends over and over and over again and try a whole bunch of things. And sometimes you put it all together one time and everything's perfect. So it sort of
mm,
depends on each wine has its own story. But the other aspect of it is because I'm a consultant, I'm not making the wine for me, I'm making the wine for
mm,
my client. So frequently, I'll do, uh, as an example, 3 different blends. So
mm,
one will be French style, let's say Cabernet, Bordeaux style. One will be California style, like a Napa, and maybe what the third one is somewhere in between.
mm,
And because they frequently are like, "Oh, I really want a low alcohol wine, but I want it to have a lot of concentration and depth." And
mm.
you're like, "Hmm, okay." And so then you put together something that they said that they wanted, and then you put together a couple other blends, and you have them try. And frequently, what it's like saying, "I really like, low calorie, diet food." That's what
Mm,
they say they want, but then you have the rich creamy thing sitting right next to it, and the rich creamy thing gets eaten first.
that's
So it
awesome.
really
Well,
depends
that's
on,
like the thing, like, as you
yeah,
start mixing these things, there's
yeah,
pairings that, like, and food as well.
mhm,
My wife yesterday, was making me something, and she went out and she's like, "I'm gonna try something creative," and she started mixing these different flavors. And, one of the things too is when I had the meal, and it was just absolutely phenomenal,
mhm,
and one of the things that struck me was the balance. It was, coming back to that balance that was in the
yeah,
whole thing. That, when you look at foods, especially like, I mean, coming from being a chef, I'm sure it gives you a different lens to how you approach winemaking, whether it be
yeah.
balance, restraint, or timing. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
So, I feel like there's the angel and devil on my shoulders. And one is very scientific, and everything is by the numbers, and it has to match a certain profile, and the other side is like, "Let the wine be." And so you're like, so that's where you're walking the block, and you're tasting because you've already got kind of a rough idea where the bricks and the acids are at, and how the logistics of the trucking or the winery and what they can receive and all these characters going on. And then on the other hand, you're like walking through and you're like, um, is it yum? Is it all the way there to exactly what you want? And sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. So it's sort of like you have kind of the practical side going on, and then you have this other side of you the wine, as I said, the wine and the fruit talk to you and tell you it's ready or it's not. So there's so many traits that are going on in the vineyard. And then, as it's fermenting, I think a lot about, um if you do a long cold soak and you do a lot of pump overs at the beginning of the fermentation, it's mostly juice, so there's not any real alcohol there. And so you're going to get a lot of flavor and color and aroma from the skins just
Mm,
from doing the pump overs. But then as the alcohol gets higher, you're going to get a lot more tannin, a lot more astringency, a lot more bitterness, and so you're, like, constantly like, "How do I get all those beautiful things that the fruit had to give on its own? And how do I balance with, um, what the alcohol is doing or what the barrels are doing or how many months it's in barrel?" I mean, there's so many aspects to it. So it's sort of like you're constantly, um kind of controlling chaos, I guess is the best
I
way to
love that.
describe it. Yeah.
I love that.
So it's sort of like, if it's Sauvignon Blanc, it's in and out of the winery really quickly. But so the temperature and the type of yeast you're using, or there's so many aspects that you can have a huge impact on it. And whereas Cabernet is going to be in a barrel for 2 years, so a lot of those harvest things are not as significant. So it just depends on the wine and what you're trying to make.
When in life, there's
Hmm.
chaos, and, like, you mentioned that a little bit too, like,
Yeah.
when you go into winemaking, how do you balance the chaos with, getting? Because it's like, certainly, like, imagine that you're painting something,
Hmm.
and then you suddenly knock over the paint, and you're like, "Ooh, oops."
Yeah.
How do you then turn that into something beautiful? Because I mean, nature doesn't play by the rules all the time. Nature does its own thing.
That's true. Uh, I was I think back to a time when I worked at a winery, and the this particular person that I was working for, he's like, a little bit of VA is a good thing. So he always had one barrel of bad wine to blend in, and so I remembered that. And then I worked for another company, and we used to make a lot of private label wines. So we would buy wine on the bulk market, and I would um, ba basically create a wine and a label and a brand in, like, 6 to 8 weeks, and it was, like, instant, making a brand new wine. And so he said, "You like a little bit of funk." And I was like, "Well, that's true." So, sometimes, you're putting a blend together, and I would say that's actually true with perfume because, there are compounds that they use in perfume that are actually funky, and, so they have all these beautiful things in there, but in addition to it, they add a little bit of something a little off. So
Mm.
having
That's
something that's
interesting too,
imperfect
because
is actually
and again, it
okay.
comes back to that yeah, it
Mhm.
comes back to the idea of the blend. Sometimes
Yeah.
things that are on their own don't sound or taste good, but,
Mhm.
when you
Mhm.
mix them in with something we went to like a hot pot restaurant for my family last week, and there was this one type of a special type of pepper, like a Chinese pepper. I don't know what it was. It
It
was
was
not
a
like a regular.
Szechuan peppercorn?
No, it wasn't. I know Szechuan
Oh,
peppercorns, and
okay.
those are delicious. This was something else. My wife
Okay.
was like, "This is a type of pepper fruit." I've never seen it. I've seen a lot of weird things. So I tasted it. It was bitter, sour, and peppery at the same time, and I was just like, "Why would
Mhm.
you do that? Who wants to eat that?" But she's like, "Alright,
Uh-huh.
you ate it by itself. Taste it with a bite of the food." And I took it with a bite of the food, and it was just the food exploded in my mouth,
Yes. Uh-huh.
and I was
I
just
would
like,
say fish sauce is like that, right?
Also, right? It
Yeah.
very much is so. Talk to me
Mhm.
about how you can kind of mellow in certain flavors when you're making wines.
So, frequently, you have, like, whatever number of wines that you made for that particular vintage, and you, have them all lined up, and so you start with, a plan,
Mm,
like in an ideal world, I need this many cases. It needs to be this varietal, this appellation, this price point. So you have all these factors that you're taking into consideration. And then you try that. So you're like, oh, let me try blend A. And if I
mm.
did everything following every guideline I need, then you come up with this blend. And you're like, that's not it. And then you're like, "Let me, reduce a little bit of this and increase a little bit of that." Or because a lot of times you've tasted each individual part by itself, so you have a kind of a catalog in your head of what you have available. And then you start to dose in, like, a lot of times, you don't need to add a lot. So some things uh, it's 2% or 5% of something, and it makes a significant change to the blend in general. So, there's so many aspects to it. So I try, sometimes it's one blend and sometimes it's 25 times. And sometimes you do the 25 and then you come back to the first one. So,
Mm,
a lot of times, I suggest, uh, you try all these different themes and variations and then make a little bottle of it so that you can let it sit and taste it another day because, um, everything you're tasting is impacting your taste buds, and so you can only do so many tastes per day. When I'm wine judging, I could taste 150 wines in one day, which is a lot.
that's a lot.
Um, but I would say the average person probably could taste like 5 or something like that.
I was thinking
Um,
like, wow, 150, man. I'd be overloaded.
so, sparkling water is your friend.
I'm sure.
Yeah, but so it's sort of like, when I'm talking to a client and trying to understand where we wanna go, um, I try to, make them give me a story. Tell me so it can be like creating a personality or creating a profile or creating, some kind of vision of where you want this wine to be, and that's why I say sometimes you say you want the heart healthy, low calorie food item, and then in reality, what you want is the thing with all the cream and butter in it. So, so but you're trying to understand, it's not my brand, it's not my company. I'm trying to make exactly what you want to portray your business as. So what your every decision you make for the entire life of the wine, where you decide to get the fruit from, or which grower you're working with, or what barrels you're using, or what the alcohol content is, or what the label looks like on the bottle, or which kind of bottle you buy, right? So you could have one of those massive 2-pound Cabernet bottles with the really big shoulders because you're trying to portray something, right? So the idea is I talk to them for a long time. Probably the first thing I do is, "Do you really wanna be in the wine business?" But the
Right?
second question is, "What do you want the personality of this wine to be?" Because, I'm not the one who's gonna be out there selling it. I'm gonna be the one
Mhm.
who created this wine, and then you're gonna have to go out and sell it. So it feels like there's gotta be, something that's important to you that you're trying to convey, and then I'm happy to kind of guide you to that endpoint.
I love that. One of the things that
Mhm,
there's a couple things that pop up there. First of all,
mhm.
and like going back to our chaos thing, like early on in our interview, we were about 5 minutes in, and I noticed I didn't turn on my nicer camera. So this is just my webcam on my computer. And I was just like,
Okay.
chaos strikes again. And I was just like, but you know what? Run with it, man. It is what it
There
is.
you
And
go. There you go.
it is what it is. It's like, because
Mhm,
here's the thing. The webcam that I'm using doesn't matter. It's the story we're telling. And, like,
mhm.
in this podcast, already I'm seeing the story of chaos creating something beautiful is a
Right.
common theme, and, like, if you can
There's
figure
your
out your story
jazz.
right? You know,
Yeah,
it's jazz, the wrong note played at the right moment creates a masterpiece, and
absolutely.
if you can play with it and run with it, it makes something special. Now, this is one of the things too that I think about when I make video content for people. Like someone comes in, I want to do this. And it's like, but why? Like, what is it? Like, I want to get 1 million views on my video. And I was like, but why? What are you
Yeah.
wanting to do with it?
Mhm,
That's fun to say, but are you trying to tell a story? What's the story you're trying to tell? So you're making a bottle of wine. Well, what's the
mhm,
story? One day I would love to have my own I would love eventually to have my own wine, like, brand
mhm,
label, and I was thinking, like, what would it be that I wanna tell? I remember when I was young, and I was, uh, working in the Napa Valley. I was a waiter at the Poolside Terrace Cafe in college at
mhm.
Meadowood, and, one
Oh,
night
okay.
yeah, one of our guests on that day at the pool busted out a bottle they had a couple nice bottles. They opened up a bottle of Contessa, they had a bottle of Screaming Eagle, but my friends opened up, a bottle like, the guests opened up a bottle of Screaming Eagle, a bottle of Contessa that as a college
Wow.
student, I never could afford, and they were just having a party by the pool, they were having a great day. and they only drank like a glass and a half of each of them, and they're like,
Oh
"Here,
my
you
goodness.
can have these." Oh my goodness, for sure. And so I was just like, I got those home, and I was like, me and my friends, I was like, "Dude, we went out by this beautiful lake. We sat down, we had this wine as the sunset, and like that moment of this togetherness, of this great wine, of this spontaneity, of this chaotic day that came together perfectly is
Yeah,
100% what I would wanna put into every bottle. And see, right there, man, that's what are you putting into your bottle? What's the story you wanna tell? What is it that you're able to channel? You know, for me, puppies and
absolutely.
good wine. That's it.
So, I it's really interesting because I feel like, most people have one idea of what the wine should be or what the brand should be, and, I think making wine is just cool. So,
That's awesome.
I don't feel like I need to be that specific with it. I don't have to be so worried about, oh, I only want to have wine or make wine from one appellation or one varietal or whatever. Um, I kind of want the wine to talk to me and give me that story, whatever that is. Yeah, that's important.
I love that. You know, and one of
Hmm.
the things too is, there are so many varietals. There are so many, like, appellations. There's so many
Hmm.
locations, like, it's such a magical little thing. It's like, you get to play with all of this, and this is the thing I love about chaos too. Coming back to
Hmm.
this chaos thing, you know what the crazy thing is about chaos? Is inside of all the chaos, there's potential. There's always potential, you
Yeah.
know? I carry with me, I don't smoke, but my
Hmm.
little fidget toy, I carry a Zippo with me, and
You've had
I
that a
don't
long time.
I've had this a long time, and one of the things that's with me is, like, I light it, and what I think about with that and what this inspires me, and I love it, is because it's potential.
Hmm.
Fire is potential. Is like you light this, and that could become anything. You can turn it into a meal that can cook for you. You go back in time, and you think about how they had to rub sticks together to create fire. But like right now, we
Hmm.
have all of this powerful potential. I used to teach children. I used to be a school teacher, and
Hmm.
before I started my company and moved full time into media, I would teach kids. You know, multiple days a week English, and one of the things is I would look at this young person and be able to see potential. And I taught long enough that so many of my students moved on and became adults who got into the work world. But like, I remember when they were young, I could see them and I could see, you know what? This kid's got that spark. And I would love to know, like, when you look at a wine, are you seeing that spark, that potential, early on?
Yeah. Yes. Because so I think sometimes um, there there's a especially when I was working in a bigger winery, so we had a lot more fruit. So let's say I was at, Sterling and we used to make, I think, like 32 different wines. So we had, uh none of the vineyards are very big in Napa, so if you're gonna make a large volume of wine, you're gonna go to a lot of vineyards.
Mm,
And, so if you thought about the year, the really good stuff was kind of the beginning or the middle of the harvest, but by
mm,
the time you get to the end of the season, that's the stuff that was less expensive, and for whatever reason, maybe it's virus or maybe it's just cheaper or whatever, and, so you were like, "Oh, those stuff I had last week was so good." So, there are days where you're just like, "I have the best job ever," and then there are other days where you're like, "Oh, I wish this was such a nicer wine." So, every day the wines are different, and, I like being in the cellar and tasting through the different cooperages, and I like showing, the wines that are possible to the people that are tasting with me because I feel like I can sort of convey, flavors and textures and stuff to them that they hadn't never thought of.
I love that.
So I feel like I have this one client now, and he says that if he doesn't come away from our meetings with his head spinning, then I haven't done my job. So,
I love
so we're
that.
constantly like, he's like, "Well, what about this and what about that?" And then I answer, so sometimes it's practical and sometimes it's scien scientific, and sometimes it's, just, the gestalt of the thing, you know? So every time I'm trying to explain something to somebody, it's I try to have some sense of 25 years of doing this thing, and, as opposed to when I was first doing it. Um, so it really depends on the day and the wine and the environment, and there's so many aspects to it. It's hard to explain exactly.
I love that though. Well,
Mhm.
what is your go-to wine that you love to partake of, or
Mm.
what are your go-to wines? Maybe it's more than one.
So, I think, lately I've started cooking pop-up dinners, and
Mm.
so, I'm doing, uh, some cooking again, and, so that's kind of interesting, but in this case, I'm pouring wines that I made to go with food that I made,
Ooh,
so that's kind of fun.
not
So it's
not too
just
subtle of a flex right there. That's pretty awesome.
right?
Let's pair the
And
wine I made with
people
my food. That's awesome.
so people are paying to do that, which is great. Um,
That's awesome.
so in that case, I'm trying to give them something that I think that works together,
Mm,
but I also, I think it's just fun to be able to be like, "I did that," and part of what I think it is, I give a little bit of myself in everything that I make. So
mm,
it's sort of like, uh, giving them a little bit of a gift in a way. So, by me sharing this food or this wine with them, it's just like giving them just a little piece of me in there. As far as what I'm getting a glass of when I'm in a restaurant, I like, aromatic whites. So I'm
mm.
probably getting like a Gruner Veltliner or a, Albarino or something like that. I like the acidity. I like something that, um, just makes the food just it's sort of like, mouth-watering on its
Wow.
own, and then it just adds to the richness of the food with the acidity of the wines. I think they go really well together.
I love that. I love that actually. Well, let
Yeah.
me
So
ask
that's
you.
probably what I do the most.
Oh, yeah? One last
Yeah. But
question. Where
yeah.
can people find out more about you and the wines you make?
So, I have my own website.
That's
So,
awesome.
if you go to Shea Julie S, people are confused by that, but, Shea meaning the house of, and when I was in, I don't know, probably high school or something, I thought, "Wouldn't it be cool to have my own restaurant?" And then I got smarter. And I decided that that's a very hard life. But so Shea is sort of like the house of is a very common name for restaurants. So Shea Julie it's the house of Julie, right? So SheaJulieS.com is my website. So,
Right.
but you can find me there. I'm also on, Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram and all these things. So, I post a lot about, um, making wine, judging wine, teaching people about foraging for mushrooms or cooking, um, on social media. And, I rarely talk about the brands, but, I'm happy to tell you about those if you like as well. But, I really, am out there a lot. I try to get people to just know that I am out there and that they can find me and the food and the wine that I'm making. I'm happy to share about that. So, that that's the simple answer.